So we've talked about osmoregulation in humans. We're now talking about it in plants. We're still in Unit 2, Topic 1, pardon me. And so we're talking about structural and homeostatic mechanisms that allow plants to manage their water and salt intake, and we're still looking in terms of feedback control diagrams. Right, osmoregulation refers to the balance of water and salt in organisms. So we've done that before, and the water balance with the salt balance go hand in hand. So maintaining water balance is different in aquatic and terrestrial environments, and also varies between saltwater and freshwater plants. Okay, many types of plants, in lots of different habitats. So this is a really complex issue, particularly given they are far less mobile than animals and can't actually make behavioral changes in too many ways. So it makes them really vulnerable to their surrounds. They have to rely on nearby water sources to prevent dehydration. Now, evapotranspiration we have talked about before. It's the loss of water by temperature, from the stomata, and it's affected by things like temperature, light intensity, airflow, wind, humidity, soil, water, all those kinds of things. So plants in different environments are going to have different physical adaptations to deal with this, which makes a lot of sense. And remembering that our structure of plant cells can also assist with this water storage. They have that large vacuole that provides cells with a little bit of stability and a little bit of backup water, I suppose, and that just kind of rigid structure with that plant cell wall allows for them to either have that pressure, or they can go a little bit flaccid and droopy when they lose this water as well. Right, so plants can be grouped according to their environments in which they grow, and that's how we're going to kind of refer to them later on, and they have lots of different adaptations depending on where they are. So xerophytes are minimal. They have lots of adaptations because they're surviving in places where there are little liquid water available. So we're talking succulents and cacti. We have hydrophytes that are adapted to grow wholly or partly submerged in water or wet environments. We've got halophytes, which are plants that grow in waters of high salinity, so we could be talking about mangroves here, and mesophytes are kind of the gardeny plants that we're prone to think about if we think about plants. All right, so structural and homeostatic mechanisms, that's what we're looking at, or adaptations, pardon me. Stomata, vacuoles, cuticles, and abscisic acid. So our very first one, we're talking about stomata here. And stomata are those pores on the leaves, and they're surrounded by two guard cells. We know this, and they're used as an entry or exit point for carbon dioxide and water. They close to reduce transpiration, and they open up to allow for it. So their density on the leaf is going to change based on where they live and what kind of environment they're in. If it's a hot and dry environment, they're going to have increased water loss, so they want to close up, and they might have a smaller density of stomata so they don't lose water, and vice versa. Now, plant cells have really large central vacuoles to maintain that fluid pressure in them. So the vacuoles storing water and nutrients, and it's also providing a little bit of rigidity. So if you are losing that water, then we will start to see that kind of droopy plant, because this is regulating swelling, shrinking, and all those types of things. They're guarding against some environmental changes. Right, a cuticle is sitting on top here, the wax cuticle, and we can see it up close here. And it's a bit of a protective barrier to prevent water loss. It's made of cutin, which is like a fatty acid and glycerol polymer, and it provides structural integrity for that leaf. If it's permeable, the plant becomes really vulnerable to water loss. So some plants cover themselves in a waxy cuticle for protection, and it can also reflect light and heat, and that's why we can see the waxy one, all this water is kind of pooling on top of it. All right, our homeostatic mechanism here is a plant hormone, and it's abscisic acid. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And what it does is so many things, actually, but the main one we need to think about is how it is protecting this leaf against losing water. That's all we care about in this situation. So when a plant is undergoing heat stress, this hormone is stimulating the guard cells to close to prevent this water loss. Okay, so when the plant is rehydrated or conditions are better, then it will stop being produced because it's fine, everyone calm down. So some plants have receptors in the roots that respond to the drying out of the soil, and then it starts releasing the hormone into the xylem tissue, and it pardon me, it can also cause the dropping off of leaves and ripe fruits and things like that. So it's got so many different functions here. There's almost too many to mention. It's going to prevent early bud growth in plants in winter. So hey, don't come out too early because we're not ready to expend this amount of energy. It encourages those dead leaves to disappear, the ripe fruit to fall, as I mentioned earlier, and it is stopping those seeds from germinating. So many. So most structural features are just preventing water loss in these dry, hot, windy conditions. And we're talking xerophytes here, and they have so many adaptations to do just that because they're in the prime position where they need to hold on to their water. So they have quite a number of these things we've already mentioned to avoid drying out completely. Cacti are our classic one of that. This is from an old textbook we used to use, and you can see them all annotated here. Our mesophytes kind of are sitting in the Goldilocks zone. So they don't have too much water, they don't have too little, they have this kind of continuous supply. They're often fruiting and flowering plants and crops. They're fairly common. They have broad green flat leaves because they don't have to worry too much about losing all that water. And they have really large root systems because they can stretch out and basically find any water available in the soil. Our halophytes are in a tricky position because they're in a very salty environment. They have to think about not taking in too much, not losing too much water due to osmosis. So they grow in, these mangrovey areas where maybe some kind of river is meeting the sea or so they're ocean, blah, blah, blah. So true halophytes show optimal growth in salty water. They don't just tolerate it. So they actually are living there permanently. And we're talking the thick waxy cuticle here, and you can see a lot of salt actually accumulating on the outside of that there. Now hydrophytes are those ones that are living in water systems. They generally have reduced or absent root systems. They don't really need to go and find the water, it's right there for them. Their stems are pretty flexible, they're pretty thin because the water is providing some of that support, and they generally don't have well-developed vascular systems. It's not really necessary to have to worry about transporting that water very far. Their leaves will float on the surface. They're usually pretty wide and broad. Big surface area there, lots and lots of stomata without guard cells on the upper leaf surface, absent on the lower leaf surface there. So there's quite a lot about that, but again, if you're comparing these to xerophytes, so many differences because they're chalk and cheese in terms of their habitat that they're living in. Our focus is these ones here, and it would be nice to be able to find some more diagrams about this as well.